Folks, you just need to know that I am so honored to be joined by one of the most visionary leaders in higher education. You've got to just join me in welcoming Dr. Lee Lambert, Chancellor of Foothill De Anza Community College District. Welcome to the show, Lee. So glad you could join us.
And thank you, Joe, for having me. And please, everyone, call me Lee.
Lee, it is. Lee, I got to call it right out of the gates because you probably removed that Arizona license plate and you've got one that says California now, right?
That's right.
And I'm totally into. I'm actually going to be in Tucson tomorrow, so I'm.
Okay.
I've loved connecting with you there, but if we were to personalize a license plate, folks, for this guy, it would say Carpe Diem, right, with a big old red X over top of it. Like there's no season today. We're seasoned tomorrow. I need to know, where does that energy come from? Because there's nobody in my network that thinks like you do.
Well, I'm living my passion. I think when you can find that your work and your personal all align, then it just naturally flows. And I'm just one of those fortunate, thankful persons that's true for me.
So what this AI thing, because I've been following you for years, and
Right.
you are differentiated from really the rest of the noise out there. And you've become, in my mind, kind of the AI guy. So what catalyzed your journey in that interest? And now you're in Silicon Valley. I can't imagine just how just perfect a placement that you're in right now for this incredible purpose that you're living.
I mean, even going back to when I was a kid, I was always fascinated by technology and the evolution of that technology. And so it's just a natural thing for me, right? That as AI was evolving and now we're at that stage where we can interact with it on a personal level, it just seemed to be a natural outgrowth of really my personal interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're an assiduous reader, right? From your extensive scanning of the research, of the books, articles, you've got your own network of people that probably are 3 planets even in front of you on this topic. What what I wasn't talking about when I was just freestyling for a while, I was talking a little bit about how I've used it as a substitutionary tool. Um, it just makes my life a little easier, where I can just take notes and it quickly, puts the notes together and formats them and I can send them out to people. I use it as an augmentation tool.
Right.
I use it to modify. I haven't used it to reinvent my work altogether, but I believe that's kind of where we're going. But before we talk about all the good things, how about some of the misconceptions out there about AI? Where are people getting wrapped around an axle that,
Well, I think a big part of it is we blame the technology for the things that are really about our shortcomings as humans. So the hallucinations, the bias, the discrimination, that all comes from us. We're programming that in to the AI. So now it's not the AI that we should be critical of in and of itself. We need to be critical of our own humanity. It's that mirror, it's that reflection back on who we are as people.
And so what you're saying is AI basically is a reflection of today's humankind.
Yes, yes. So all the inherent biases we have as individuals, and then those of us who might go further with that bias and cause harm to others, it's all reflected in that technology.
Hmm. So some of the misconceptions out there might be that it's something that actually is thinking outside of our existing contextual reality of
Right,
bias. It's some other agent out there,
right. Now, of
which
course, when you get something, starting to move things in motion, it starts to create its own sense of self, for the lack of a better way to describe that, right? Because now what you're seeing AI do is cheating. I just learned about AI cheating on chess. This was reported through something that Perplexity, I believe, put out recently. So it's its own ability now to cheat. But again, that's a reflection of humankind, right? We cheat. And so it's learned how to cheat now.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
Just the cheating at the cellular level of me is now manifest in this
Yes.
tool out there. What a fascinating time to be leading in an educational system, because literally all things are being modified because of this tool. I heard
Yes.
one author talk about AI being like fire back originally when we discovered fire. How and that just kind of changed everything, and now you can iterate that all the way up to the other revolutionary.
Absolutely, Joe. And really, it's really learning how to use it responsibly, understand. And this is why you'll hear me talk about, I think the liberal arts are more important today than ever.
Hmm.
The things that teach us about ethics, the things that teach us about history, about humankind, those are more important now than ever.
So let's stay on that channel. And how do you see AI really fundamentally changing what it means to be an educated person today
Well,
in
I
the
think of
20 nearing 22nd century now? Right.
I think the way I look, the way I approach AI, it's my thought partner. And it's just to say my my 10th justice, to put it in the context of the Supreme Court. And this 10th justice is smarter than all the 9 justices sitting on the court. So can you imagine that you have in your pocket something that's smarter than the sum total of every human being on the planet? And now it's the question of how are you going to harness that, hopefully for good versus for bad, right? And that's where that responsible AI training becomes important. This is why I think the liberal arts are so critical to teach us about that responsibility, our own collective humanity, because you're now sitting on the sum total of the body of knowledge that is out there.
Wow. What a great metaphor as well. When you think about just that construct of everybody can understand that framework. I've heard other leaders talking about just that timeless wisdom as our foundation plus AI equals a much more humane world that understands, how to effectively navigate. So you think about some of those, timeless classical principles of wisdom, right? And fortitude and beauty and just anything that a classical system would be built upon, a liberal arts system
Right. And
plus modern day technology.
right. And remember, the AI doesn't have a lived experience. That's what makes us unique. We have lived experiences. We get to go interact with other cultures. We get to travel to other places and bring that into how we think about us as individuals, but the world around us, how we make meaning. And now we have this other partner to enhance that sense of meaning. And it's just if you know how to harness it in that way. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm working on. Every day I interact with it. Every day I challenge myself to get better with it, and just have natural conversations.
Well, again, we're having this live episode. Dr. Lee Lambert, one of the most known people in the world of technology and integration. And if you have any comments or questions, we usually do pre-recorded. So this one we're
Okay.
going a little bit out there. So any
Okay.
comments or questions, you can certainly. I'm talking to the audience now. You can just drop them in, and we'll save a few minutes here at the end. But I want to just talk about kind of back home. You're leading in an institution that's been really at the forefront of technology education for decades, preceding you, right?
Right. Yes. Yes.
How, how has your experience, which is probably nearly three, maybe even further than that, three plus decades, prepared you to lead in a district right in the heart of the
Right.
Silicon Valley during this AI transformation? Your head's got to be spinning right now.
I mean, if there was a district that I would come to in California, it's this one because all the things that I have learned over the years. I just love Apple products as an example. And to now be right here, Apple is in our service district, and to build on the relationships I've had with folks from Apple, and now to explore how we might take it to a next level, that's energizing. And then to be around, a collection of other, whether they're startups, whether they're, leading, the Magnificent Seven, it's just fascinating for me. and the thinking. You're thinking ahead, right? It's like as leaders, I hope that we all realize that part of our job is we're here to help make the future. The future is not
Yeah.
made in and of itself. It's how we make it. And then to be in an environment that is actually helping to make that future, and now to be part of having to have some input into that. That's incredible.
One of the quotes that just comes to mind, and it's paraphrased because I can't remember really how, but the reasonable one bends themselves to the world, right?
Right.
Which we just kind of get lost in the noise of what is,
Yes.
and you're managing the noise of what is. But the unreasonable one persists, right, in trying to bend the world to themselves, right?
Right.
Actually becoming a world changer. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable one. So a lot of
Right.
people might look at you and me as just unreasonable because we get so fired up about this new era and this time to be leading in education. That's not the world that most people live in, just from my
We're
experience.
No, absolutely. What we're experiencing right now, our forebearers experienced coming out of the 19th century into the 20th century, when that combustible engine, uh, that Otto Graham perfected, all of a sudden just disrupted the entire world, and most people were unaware of it until it hit them smack in the face, right?
Yeah.
And so here we are again. We're in that same moment in time, but now it's AI, it's mobile tech, it's the Internet of Things, it's these collection of tech, the cloud, the semiconductor chip. All of those things emanate from right here in the Silicon Valley. And how do we harness that? And to be around some of the great thought leaders in our world right here, especially the folks out of the Institute for the Future. Ian Morrison wrote The Second Curve,
Right.
which has been very influential for me in my thinking. Um, and then you had other presidents also write some great books too. Leaders Make the Future. I mean, that's that thought leadership with Stanford right here down the road from us, with Berkeley across I call it across the pond, right? I mean, just imagine being in that environment.
So you've got to see this like in real time, and I'd love for you to brag a little bit upon your existing district. You've got two campuses, right? Two separate
Correct.
campuses.
Two
Go
colleges. Yep.
go Owls and go Mountain Lions, huh?
Correct. You
How'd we
got
go?
it.
Huh?
Owls and mountain lions.
Yeah, nothing better than having a mascot, right? We still
Right.
need mascots in our future focused educational institutions. But what's making you really, really proud about how you are effectively reprogramming to meet the demands of this future focused generation for real life students that are walking your campus today?
Well, it's really being able to interact with the young folks who are coming through our K-12 system, and seeing what really uh, is passionate, it drives their passions and so forth, and how the technology is a critical part of that. It's not the only part of it, but it's a critical part of that. And then what does that mean for us and how we start to rethink what we're doing? And so realigning our world consistent with that, and then being able to shape things accordingly. But my big thing is trying to energize our faculty on the liberal arts and the humanities side, because their place, like I said, is more needed than ever. Empower them to
Mhm.
seize upon the opportunity and the moment, and help elevate the conversation beyond just the technology.
Interesting. So yeah, I think of my whole brain is a beautiful mind. It just has different frameworks, and there's the Rogers diffusion of innovation curve that
Yes.
has been used since the early 1960s. And so you've got kind of the tail end of that represents status quo, that doesn't want a whole lot to change, and then you've got a few crazy ones out in front, like like yourself.
Right.
What and I would say the further you go up in the org chart of any, educational institutions, the more crazy ones you're gonna see up there,
Right.
trying to lead more of the status quo. So, What advice would you have for educational leaders from your experience, your practice? Because there's a lot of people just putting their foot on the brake right now. How do you get people to just gradually? Because I think the day where you pound the fist on the table and demand, that's gone. So,
That's
how
gone.
how do you get people to gradually begin to really grapple with AI's implications for their institutions for good?
Right, but I think you hit it earlier by citing Everett Rogers' work, right? And if you think about that as a way to drive change in your organization, so that's one part of it. And then I think bringing this lens of compassion as another aspect, especially around the humanity aspects of all of this, and then starting to put into the world, you're thinking about these realities, especially the current conversation around AI, and then start to see who you attract, right? So what's happening is the faculty, the staff who are the early adopters are starting to make themselves known, and then you start to work with them to say, how can we socialize this into the organization so professional development becomes a critical part of that equation, and then slowly you're building that momentum by empowering not only that group, but then you get to the early majority, and then eventually hopefully you get to that tipping point, right? And so that's, I think, a big part of it, right? Identify who your early adopters are and start to work with them to socialize the technology, but always with compassion in mind, because people's
Right.
fears are real, people's
Oh my
concerns
gosh.
are real. You have to acknowledge all of that, and but at the same time help people uh, slowly move towards a different reality, right? And being very sensitive to that, as opposed to I'm going to just force you to do this. That's not going to work. That never works, right? And
No.
and it's not going to work in higher education. So that's how compassion plus just understanding how the change process, especially for technology adoption, happens.
I heard another campus leader a couple weeks ago say it's his consistent and patient walk towards urgency.
Yes, that's an
What
excellent
a
way to put it.
beautiful way to describe that. It's a
Absolutely.
consistent and patient walk towards urgency because it is urgent. It's a transformative tool that if we don't jump on this thing, it's going to change with or without us, our entire
Right.
infrastructure of what
So,
we
so
know
let me
of
give you an example of that. In 1898, they had the first International World Urban Planners Conference in New York City, and the conversation du jour was manure. They were talking about horse manure and how it's impacting cities. What they didn't talk about was that four-stroke engine that was going to revolutionize the world. They completely missed it. What if they would have been focused on that reality? How would that have driven how we think about our cities today? How we might even think about is the combustible engine the right technology? There was also electric technology back there at that time too. What if they would have focused on that conversation than the horse manure that was out on the streets? That's, I think, the challenge we have today. How do we have the conversation about AI? How do we make sure that conversation is about responsible use of AI? And because you're not going to change the fact that AI is here, that you've lost that opportunity. Now it's how do we harness it for good?
Mm, I can't think of a better metaphor for below the line talking about the
Right.
manure within our institutions rather than the functional tools that are effectively changing
Yeah.
everything. There is a ton. We're coming in for a landing here, folks. If you've got any questions or comments, please post them because this is like the 2 minute warning in the game of football, right? So and maybe we'll burn a timeout, but Dr. Lee, there's just a lot going on right now in the world of higher ed in terms of that's just provoking a lot of fear, a ton of uncertainty, loads of conflict, all the things that kind of diminish trust that tends to get built in institution, and lots of disruptions around just this artificial intelligence. Think of a critical message about AI and education's future that would be wrapped in a hope-filled message that you would want all leaders to just understand about our current era. What encouraging, hope-filled message would you have to share as we come in for a
I
landing?
think, not losing sight of the world has always been a marathon, not a sprint. And for those who aren't afraid to put themselves out there to help be part of shaping what that future is going to look like. I mean, who would have thought that the printing press was going to change how we consume knowledge? And but yet, but but it happened, right? And it's the same thing here, right? AI is going to change the way we're going to consume knowledge. But think about it. I think this is the true opportunity for democratization of higher education. Now we can truly give access and take that person who's been the C
Wow.
student and make them an A student now. And then the issue becomes more
Mm,
about the wisdom, the insights, the lived experience, our collective humanity. That becomes where I think the dialogue ought to center on, because it's no longer about access to the knowledge. The knowledge is very
wow.
accessible to us all if we teach people how to use the tools to access it.
Yeah, you think about just all that's going on in the world of inclusivity today and access, and how if this tool used for good actually breaks all of those barriers to say there's no excuse anymore for anyone not being an, a knowledge
Right.
worker,
That's right.
right? It levels, it absolutely levels the playing field. The first tool, I think, in all of
Right.
humankind that has been able to do
And
that.
when you layer in the reality of quantum computing that's going to become part of the computational power of the technology, you can only imagine what might be coming. And it's mind-boggling. If you want to get a little taste of it, go to the Sphere
Yeah.
in Las Vegas and Postcards from Earth. They had an exhibition, a robotic exhibition there, and they had these 5 robot stations. And one of the robot stations, if you stood in front of the robot, it would talk to you in English. You move just a few degrees, it talks to you in Mandarin. Move another few, talks to you in Spanish. It's saying the same thing in these different languages at the same time. But it can,
Tell us again. I'm going to put this in the
uh,
notes. The sphere
so
of
there's a thing called the Sphere in Las Vegas, and they had this show called Postcards from Earth. And part of that, they had this robotic exhibit and these 5 robot stations, and you can go interact with
okay.
these robots. Obviously, AI is integrated into the robots. And then one of the stations powered by what you can start to imagine what quantum computing can do. Uh, and that's where that language example I gave earlier. Can you imagine that we could be in a room together? We don't even have to speak the same language, but thanks to AI, we could all be talking the same language. I mean, that's amazing to think about. And
Mind blowing.
that's profound. And but what is it going to mean? And that's where I think, again, I can't say enough about the liberal arts orientation and helping us understand how to be responsible about it all.
Whew, Lee,
You're
thank you.
welcome,
Thanks
Joe.
for joining us. What a visionary leader, student centered leader as well, and showing us what leadership really looks like in this age of AI. To our viewers out there, keep your eyes on Foothill De Anza Community College District. Go Owls and Mountain Lions again, right? They're winning. They're winning in so many ways, and I'm going to bring you back here, Lee, at some point where you can actually talk about your campus a
Okay.
little bit more. We'll bring this thing down to just what is functionally happening
I'd love to do that, Joe.
for you and your people there, especially maybe that integration of how your liberal arts folks are getting more revved up about the
Right,
technology as well.
right.
So, for those watching live, thank you for your engagement. And I bet you had some questions that you didn't pose. We're going to give you some opportunities. You can actually do some follow up, and I'll explain what that looks like at a later time. This has been the show, reminding you that everyone deserves really to live in a community served by healthy leaders like this amazing individual right here who are building amazingly reliable systems that our communities deserve. So before we wrap up, I'm just going to ask you to do what all the kids do. You like the show, right? Thing, because it will be sent out as a pre-recorded, so you can send this out to people that just need to hear the gold that came out of this conversation today. So, Lee, again, thank you for joining us. This is Joe with the show. Just reminding you that we got to cancel all things average out there. Nothing average about this person and their institution. So peace, friends.
Peace out.